The scent of white roses and something metallic from the hairspray clung to me like a memory I hadn't asked for. Nothing in that room belonged to me. Not the perfume, not the dress, not the silence, and definitely not the last name they expected me to take in less than an hour. Someone had spritzed that fragrance on me minutes ago, or maybe hours. Time had lost its shape here. It stretched and collapsed in strange waves, like the whole house breathed differently from the world outside. I blinked twice, and the sun had shifted across the sky. Blink again, and the light on the marble changed color. Time was dangerous now. The suite was too beautiful to be real. White marble floors, a heavy rug, a canopy bed draped in gauzy fabric, and curtains that let in soft afternoon light. If I ignored the reinforced door with the biometric lock and the nearly invisible security cameras embedded in the molding, I could pretend it was a luxury hotel. But I wasn't a child. I didn't get to pretend. My fingers trembled as they slid across the skirt of the wedding dress. White silk, heavy lace, hand-sewn beadwork that sparkled when the light hit. A dress that probably cost more than everything my family had ever owned combined. It didn't feel like a dress. It felt like shackles. I walked toward the window. The glass was thick and cold, even with the golden sunlight filtering through. Below, the garden looked like a scene from a movie. Perfect lawn, reflecting pool catching the sky, rows of white rose bushes in strategic lines. And men. Always them. Men in tailored black suits, sunglasses despite the shade, broad shoulders that hinted at the weapons holstered beneath their jackets. They moved with a certain choreography, never rushed, never relaxed. They weren't hotel staff, and they weren't ordinary bodyguards. They were soldiers of a family, the Navarro family. I grew up hearing that name in whispers. First on the news, tied to security empires, private surveillance companies, shipping, transportation. Later, in comments exchanged between hospital co-workers during my dad's night shifts. You really think Navarro's fortune comes from cameras and gated condos? One nurse laughed once. They just learned to package it better than the old families. Inside our tiny apartment in São Gonçalo, the name started to appear more often too. In the worst possible mouth, my brother's. Marcos always had talent for walking the edge. As kids, he was the charming one who convinced the building manager to let us play soccer in the garage. As a teen, he sold snacks at school and paid for his own courses with the profit. And somewhere between quitting engineering school and becoming a maintenance technician, that talent shifted in the wrong direction. Illegal gambling, underground clubs, debt. I closed my eyes, trying to push the memory away, but it came anyway, loud and sharp. 2 days earlier, the apartment was too hot. My mom had kept the windows shut again, afraid of the noise outside, so the old standing fan sounded like it was begging to retire. I was reviewing laboratory reports on my laptop when Marcos entered. The way the door slammed against the wall should have been my first warning. "You're gonna break that door one day," I muttered, not looking up. "Clara..." His tone wasn't normal. No sarcasm, no drama, just dry fear disguised as control. I lifted my head. He looked like he'd aged months overnight. Dark circles, uneven stubble, hair a mess like he'd dragged his hands through it too many times. And under all of that, a look I'd only ever seen in ICU patients waiting on bad news. What happened? I closed the laptop. I screwed up. That's hardly a revelation. Not like this. He paced the living room, hands moving restlessly from his hair to his pockets, unable to stand still. "You remember when I started doing maintenance for those clubs uptown?" he asked. "Yeah. You said it paid well, that it was just equipment." The sarcastic air quotes echoed in my voice. He exhaled a shaky breath. "It wasn't just equipment. I had suspected that, of course. But hearing it was different." "How much?" I asked. He blinked. "How much what?" "How much do you owe, Marcos?" How much you gambled, how much you can't pay back." He let out a laugh with zero humor. "It's not like that." "Then how is it?" He stopped pacing, turned to me with eyes that had lost all brightness. "They don't want the money, Clara. They want an example." Silence. I heard the bus breaking down the street, a neighbor shouting at someone. The world outside kept moving while ours froze. "Who is they?" I asked, already knowing. He hesitated before answering. "Navarro." The name dropped into the room like a stone. My stomach tightened. "You gambled in a Navarro-controlled club?" I hissed. "Are you insane?" "It wasn't like that. I started in a small place. Local gambling. Before I knew it, their people were involved, and if I didn't show up when they called, it would have been worse. Worse than this. Clara, last night 3 men dragged me behind the building and made me kneel in a parking lot just to explain that very politely. I felt sick. "Did they touch you?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Not yet. The problem is I already owed before. But the money I lost this time, it wasn't theirs. It belonged to someone they had already promised it to. And Navarro can't look weak. If he lets me go without consequence, he loses respect. If he loses respect, he loses everything," I finished, nausea rising. I knew enough about how these families worked. Marcos nodded, defeated. "They gave me 48 hours. And the amount?" He told me. "I won't repeat it. Not because it doesn't matter, but because any number large enough to destroy a family would fit. It was the kind of amount that separated the poor from the dead." "We can't pay this," I whispered. "Not by selling the apartment, not by selling the furniture, not by—" "I know." He rubbed his face, looking older than my father for a second. He swallowed hard. "They said that since I'm local, they can consider a different kind of payment." "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't answer. His silence did. When he finally forced out the words, they arrived in pieces. "They talked about you." That was when my body went cold. "They said, Navarro needs to reinforce alliances, and that sometimes marriage is worth more than money." The meaning hit me like a slap. "No." It was all I could say. "Clara?" "No, don't even finish." He ran his hands through his hair again, breathing hard. "You think I want this? You think I'm proud of this? I'm trying not to die, Clara. I'm trying to keep Mom out of this. The worst part? He wasn't wrong. My mother's asthma had gotten worse. Panic would kill her quicker than any gun. They said," he lowered his head, "that if you became the family's connection, the debt would be cleared. Connection. Such a pretty word for sacrifice." I stared at him, feeling something inside me collapse quietly. "And if I refuse?" I whispered. He looked at me with a truth so ugly it barely fit in his eyes. "You know." And I did. I knew from the moment he walked in pale like a ghost. I knew from the moment black cars started visiting our street. I knew from the moment my brother stopped sleeping. And 2 days later, the answer wasn't mine to choose anymore. They chose for me. "Miss Noguera?" The voice pulled me back into the room. I turned. The woman with the tight gray bun, Teresa, stood by the door in a perfectly tailored suit. "It's time." Just that. Time for what? Time for who? I already knew. I wanted to ask for my mother, to hear her voice, to warn her that everything was about to change. But Teresa shook her head before I opened my mouth. "Not advisable right now." "Not advisable or forbidden?" I asked. "In your position, I'd save my strength," she replied. "There are battles worth fighting. This is not one." She lifted a veil from a chair, thin, delicate, traditional. "He requested this," she said. Of course he did. Men who trade brides like alliances love tradition. She placed it gently over my head. The world blurred, edges softened. Reality stepped 1 inch away from me. She handed me the bouquet next. White roses tight in a perfect shape. One thorn escaped the wrapping and pricked my thumb. A drop of blood bloomed like a tiny rebellion. At least something in me still reacted. My father appeared at the door then. The suit he wore was borrowed, shoulders too tight, tie crooked. He avoided my eyes. "Clara," he began. "Don't apologize." I cut him off. "Not today." He swallowed shakily. "I'm here. Not really, not fully, but enough." I hooked my arm in his. If we were performing, we might as well do it properly. Teresa opened the door. The hallway glowed with candles and expensive floral arrangements. The floor reflected everything. Flowers, flames, me. I saw myself distorted in every polished surface. Walking ghost bride. The music was soft. Violin, something classical, something hollow. We descended the stairs slowly. People waited below, men in suits, women polished, no one truly smiling. In corners, the real guests stood, the armed shadows. The private chapel was small, almost intimate, but everything about it felt heavy. Marble, wood, roses, smoke from candles. And at the altar, back turned to me, stood a man. Even without seeing his face, I knew who he was. Elias Navarro. A suit tailored like a second skin. A posture that didn't just command space. It defined it. 2 men at his flanks like living shadows. My father's grip tightened, then loosened as they signaled for him to release me. He let go slowly, fingers trembling. I walked the last steps alone. The priest began the usual phrases about unity and life and commitment. Words so absurd in that context I almost laughed. Then, "The groom may unveil the bride." The air shifted. A subtle movement beside me, a hand rising. He turned toward me slowly. I still hadn't seen his face, just the change in atmosphere. The weight of his attention locking onto me for the first time. My heart reacted like prey sensing a predator. Not awe. Instinct. The priest gave the final cue. His hand reached for the veil. And part 1 of my new life ended there. On the split second between the blurred world I still had, and the moment I would look directly at the man the Mafia had chosen as my husband. A man I had only ever known through rumors and warnings. A man from the underworld. A Navarro. When the veil finally lifted, I felt the air in the room shift, like someone had quietly changed the atmospheric pressure. The fabric rose slowly, sliding over my eyes, and the golden candlelight sharpened the outline of his face for the first time. And for a second, just one, I forgot how to breathe. Elias Navarro was not simply handsome. Plenty of men were handsome. He was something else. A force, a presence, a kind of beauty that wasn't meant to be admired but feared. A sharp jaw, a trimmed beard, the kind of gaze that didn't observe, it assessed. Cold, calculating, too intelligent to be comfortable. But that wasn't what made my blood turn to ice. It was his reaction. The second my face was revealed, his expression shifted. Not in disgust, not in surprise, something far deeper, more dangerous. A muscle in his jaw flexed hard, like he'd seen something impossible. His storm gray eyes locked onto mine, drowning everything else in the room. He blinked once. Slowly, as if something he had expected to see wasn't there. I opened my mouth to speak, but the priest resumed. "We are gathered here today." Elias still didn't look away. I had no idea whether that was good or bad. The priest signaled for our hands. Mine trembled when I offered them. His didn't. His were steady, broad, warm, the kind of hands shaped by violence but controlled with precision. When his fingers wrapped around mine, a shiver ran up my spine. Not romantic, instinctive, like touching an animal whose power you could feel humming beneath the skin. "The ring," the priest said. One of the men behind him handed over the small boxes. Elias opened his without ceremony. No smile, no politeness, just purpose. He removed the thick gold band with a measured, calculated movement. "Your hand," he said, his voice low and deep, vibrating right through me. I offered it. When he slipped the ring onto my finger, something happened. A hesitation. Small. Barely noticeable. But I felt it. His eyes narrowed imperceptibly. He looked at my hand as though something there disrupted whatever story he'd built in his mind. Then he finished the motion, sliding the ring fully into place. My turn. My fingers shook embarrassingly when I tried to pick up his ring. He didn't help. He simply extended his hand, large, commanding, and waited, patient and unblinking. I slid the ring onto his finger. It fit him perfectly, like it belonged there, like none of this had ever been a choice. "You may now kiss the bride." The words fell like a sentence. I froze. He didn't. Elias stepped forward, not quickly, not hungrily, simply, inevitably. His hand rose, 4 fingers settling beneath my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheek with the softest pressure. Not affectionate, possessive. His lips touched mine with no rush, no sweetness, no cruelty. It was a kiss performed out of obligation. A seal. A signature. A private contract disguised as a public vow. I didn't move. Neither did he. He didn't linger. Didn't deepen. Just allowed the ritual to happen. When he pulled away, his face was unreadable. The congregation murmured something like a collective amen. Without smiling, without acknowledging anyone else, he simply turned toward the exit. No hand offered, no arm extended, just expectation that I would follow. So I did. Outside the chapel, the night air felt almost breathable again, only because I had forgotten to breathe indoors. 2 security men opened the path ahead. 3 more followed behind us. Not a single word was spoken as we walked. Weapons clicked quietly against holsters. Leather shoes scuffed against stone. And in the middle of it all, I walked alone, disguised as a bride and feeling more like a hostage. When we reached the front steps, a black car waited. Not a luxury car. Something far more discreet and far more dangerous. Armored, tinted, silent. The driver opened the back door for him first. Elias entered. Then the driver paused, waiting. Finally, Elias spoke, without looking back. "Let her in." The words crawled under my skin. The driver gestured and I climbed inside. The door shut with a heavy, echoing click. Inside the car, the silence was suffocating. The leather seats were cold, the air conditioning crisp. He sat beside me, but not close. His posture straight, one hand resting on his knee, the other on his jaw, eyes fixed outside like he was mapping the entire world. He didn't speak. He didn't react. He didn't even glance in my direction until the car had picked up speed. I couldn't stand it anymore. "Why me?" I asked. This time, he did look at me. Slowly, carefully, like a man opening a box he knew contained a weapon. His eyes were terrifying up close. Intelligent, sharp, unreadable, the kind of eyes that made you feel naked. "Because your brother stole money that wasn't his." His tone was neither angry nor emotional, just factual. "I know that," I replied. "But why this? Why marriage?" A pause, a long one. He studied me like he was choosing whether I deserved an honest answer. "You should be grateful you're still breathing." His words cut deep. and even more grateful your parents are too. I swallowed hard. That still doesn't answer why I had to pay. His jaw tightened, a hint of irritation sparking. You want the truth? He asked. All of it? Yes. He shifted slightly toward me, his voice dropping. Your brother stole from someone who doesn't forgive, and that someone demanded blood. My blood or his. My breath caught. Marcos. Reckless, infuriating, but still my brother. I could have handed him over. Elias continued. That would have ended the issue. I felt nausea rising. Why didn't you? His gaze locked onto mine, something darker swirling under the surface. Because when I had you investigated. He paused, not for effect, but because the words themselves were loaded. I received a photo of you. My pulse spiked. He leaned back but kept his eyes on me. And for one brief moment, he murmured, I thought someone was mocking me. Mocking you? How? I whispered. He didn't blink. You look too much like someone who no longer exists. Silence crashed between us. My heart thudded painfully. Who? I managed. He looked out the window again. That isn't relevant now. The shutdown was instant, absolute. But he still wasn't done. I bought your debt, your name, and your presence in my house. Every word came out like a verdict. You're alive because of that. Your family is alive because of that. Something fragile inside me splintered. So I'm just a shield, I whispered. He didn't hesitate. For now. That for now terrified me more than the idea of dying. The car slowed. The gates of an enormous mansion opened. Elias spoke without looking at me. Welcome to your new life, Clara. He stepped out. I followed because there was no other path. He waited until I reached him, then leaned slightly toward me, his voice barely above a whisper. Do not run. Do not lie. Do not challenge me. A breath ghosted against my ear. And never look at me like I'm your executioner. My lips trembled. If you're not, I whispered, then what are you? He stared at me like the answer was obvious. The only thing standing between you and death. With that, he turned and walked toward the mansion doors, and I followed, because there was no road back. The gates closed behind us with a mechanical groan, the sound echoing through the night like the jaws of something ancient snapping shut. A chill skated down my spine. The Navarro estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress designed to pretend it wasn't. Cameras followed our every move along the driveway. Armed men stood along the property lines, half hidden by manicured hedges. The mansion itself rose from the ground like a pale stone beast, beautiful, expensive, and utterly predatory. Elias didn't slow his pace. He never did. A guard opened the massive front door for him. Another waited for me, scanning my face with the same clinical detachment used on fingerprints. Inside, the air was cold and clean, smelling of polished stone and something faintly metallic. I tried not to think about why a house smelled like that. The foyer was huge, marble floors, a chandelier so large it must have been hung with industrial equipment, and a sweeping staircase that belonged in a museum. 2 men flanked us as Elias walked deeper inside. They're just protocol, he said, without looking back at me. Until I know who sent your brother where he wasn't supposed to be. Your brother. Again, the reminder that this entire ordeal wasn't about me. We reached a hallway lined with framed paintings, old Italian landscapes, Renaissance portraits, and one abstract piece that looked like someone had smeared blood-red paint across white canvas. Fitting. A woman in her late 50s waited near the end of the hall. Tall, severe posture, black hair streaked with silver, hands folded with the precision of someone who ran entire worlds from the shadows. Clara, Elias said, stopping beside her. This is Marta. She runs the household. Marta lowered her head slightly, respectful, but far from warm. Welcome, Mrs. Navarro, she said with a calm voice that carried steel. We've prepared the East Wing for you. Everything is ready. East Wing? Before I could even question it, Elias added, She stays in a separate suite. I blinked. A separate? He cut me off with the slightest raise of his hand. You'll have your own room. And your own key. Marta nodded, as if this decision had come directly from the Vatican. Of course, sir, as per your instructions. My chest tightened with confusion. A mafia boss, a forced marriage, a man who had threatened half the city tonight, and he wanted separate rooms? But then he clarified, his tone lowering. Honor is not negotiable. The words landed heavy, not gentle, not noble. Simply a rule he had decided applied to me. A boundary he controlled. Not kindness, control disguised as restraint. He gestured for Marta to lead the way. I followed her down a hallway so long it could have been a runway. Artwork, expensive vases, security cameras tucked discreetly into corners. Do all these guards always stay here? I asked quietly. Marta didn't slow. Security is not optional in this home. Translation. You are watched at all times. We stopped in front of double doors. She opened them to reveal a suite larger than my entire apartment back home. A sitting area with a fireplace. A balcony overlooking dark gardens. A 4-poster bed that looked too luxurious to touch. But what unsettled me most wasn't the size. It was the feeling. This isn't a room. It's a place to store something valuable. Marta observed my reaction with unreadable eyes. If you need anything, dial 9 on the bedroom phone. Someone will attend you. I turned slowly. Someone. Or you. She hesitated for the first time. I come only when necessary. Then she stepped aside, as Elias appeared in the doorway. He scanned the room. No, me. As though evaluating whether the accommodations satisfied some internal code he alone understood. You'll sleep here, he said, and you'll stay here until I decide otherwise. He stepped into the room, closing the distance between us by a fraction. Don't mistake this for freedom, he added. You have privacy, not independence. My jaw tightened. So this is just another cage, I murmured. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, recognition. A gilded one, he said. But yes. He turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. I'll have questions for you tomorrow. About what? He didn't answer. Not verbally. He simply tilted his head, a silent follow me. Against every instinct I did. We walked down 2 corridors, through a locked door that required both a code and his fingerprint. Another hallway, another lock. My skin prickled with unease. Then he opened a final door, and my breath stopped. The room was dimly lit, walls covered with corkboards, maps, documents, faces, lines of red thread connecting truths and lies into a tangled web of obsession. And there, in the center of the board, my picture. Not the wedding picture. Not my ID. A candid taken outside my bakery 3 years ago. Me laughing, flour on my cheek. I felt the world tilt. Why do you have this? My voice came out thin and unsteady. Elias stepped beside me, hands behind his back, posture rigid. Because I investigate everything. His eyes slid toward me, and something darker pulsed behind them. Especially things that don't add up. I pointed at the chaotic board. And what doesn't add up about me? His gaze locked onto mine. Your face. Cold dread washed through me. What about my face? He exhaled slowly, almost reluctantly. You resemble someone I lost." That was all he said. But the grief in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. Whoever she was, whoever I resembled, I wasn't just replacing her. I was resurrecting her ghost. The weight of that realization pressed against my ribs. Slowly, I backed away from the board. "So, this is why you married me," I whispered. He didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it. He simply said, "You shouldn't have existed in my world at all." He stepped closer, too close, and lowered his voice to something dangerous and intimate at once. "But now that you're here, I won't let you disappear." A warning, a promise, a threat. My pulse thundered as he reached past me and closed the door to the investigation room, leaving me in a mansion full of guards, in a marriage built on coercion, under the watch of a man haunted by ghosts I looked too much like. And for the first time since arriving, I understood. I wasn't just living under surveillance. I was the surveillance, and the mystery, and the obsession. The first explosion was distant, like thunder rolling somewhere beyond the walls. But thunder didn't shake marble floors. Thunder didn't send guards sprinting through hallways with guns drawn. The second blast was closer. The lights flickered, and then the mansion erupted into controlled chaos. Doors slammed open. Men shouted orders into radios. Marta appeared out of nowhere, pale but composed, already moving toward me. Before I could ask what was happening, Elias appeared at the far end of the hallway, walking fast, every line of his body coiled with lethal purpose. "Clara," his voice was a command sharp enough to cut. "With me, now." My pulse skyrocketed. What's going on? He didn't slow. War. One word, cold, precise, terrifying. He reached me in seconds, one hand gripping my wrist, not harshly, but firmly enough that escape wasn't an option. "Someone hit one of our warehouses," he said while pulling me behind him down the hall. "Explosives, coordinated, professional." I stumbled to keep up. "So, this is about your business?" He glanced back at me, and for the first time I saw something raw flicker in his eyes. "No, this is about leverage." A guard ran up to him. "Boss, the west perimeter is secure." Cameras caught movement. 3 men breaching the outer grounds. Elias's jaw flexed. "Then this is exactly what I thought." He tightened his grip on my wrist. "They're not here for territory," he said. "They're here for you." My breath vanished. "Me? You are my most vulnerable point." The words punched the air out of my lungs. He wasn't being poetic. He wasn't exaggerating. He meant it. "Elias, no talking." He pulled me faster. "Not until you're safe." We turned a corner, and 2 guards flanked us instantly. One typed something into a keypad. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a steel-reinforced staircase leading down. The air smelled colder there, metal and electricity. "What is this place?" I whispered. "The bunker." He marched me inside. The door sealed behind us with a thunderous lock. It wasn't a simple panic room. It was a subterranean safe house. Soft lighting, screens showing every angle of the mansion grounds, a medical cabinet, weapon racks, emergency supplies, a small bed, a reinforced bathroom. It was safety. It was prison. Elias didn't release me until I was fully inside. Then he cupped my face, his palms warm, his touch shaking with something that wasn't fear, but something adjacent. "Listen to me." His forehead lowered until it almost touched mine. "You stay here. You do not open this door. You do not speak to anyone except Marta or Soren." He pointed to one of the guards. "And you do not, under any circumstances, step outside this room until I come back for you." I swallowed hard. "Are you going to fight?" "I'm going to end this." No bravado, just fact. The screens reflected in his eyes, security lights flashing red across the property. I grabbed his wrist before thinking, "You can't go out there alone." His jaw clenched. "I don't have a choice." "Elias?" He leaned in, closer than he had ever allowed before. His breath brushed my cheek. "Do you think I'm afraid of dying?" he whispered. "I'm not." He angled my face up gently with a hand beneath my chin. "I'm afraid of what they'll do to you if I fail." The admission hit me like a physical blow. Before I could answer, sounds came from the stairwell above. Boots, distant shouts. He stepped back instantly, switching from vulnerable to lethal in one heartbeat. He pressed a quick, hard kiss to my forehead, so fast I almost doubted it had happened. "Stay alive, Clara," he murmured. "That's the only thing you need to do for me." And then he was gone. The bunker sealed shut. I stood frozen, heart pounding wildly, staring at the door that separated me from gunfire, chaos, and the man who had gone straight into it for me. Time broke inside the bunker. 1 minute lasted hours. 1 hour lasted centuries. The screens flickered with motion, guards running, shadows crossing the grounds, camera feeds cutting out and returning with static. I sat on the edge of the small bed, gripping a blanket like it was an anchor. Soren, the guard assigned to me, stood near the door, listening to updates on his earpiece. His expression didn't change, but his posture did. He straightened, listened, and his jaw set. My chest tightened. "Soren," I whispered. "Is he—" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Something had gone very wrong. My vision blurred. Another explosion quaked through the ground, and Soren shifted into a defensive stance. Minutes later, maybe 10, maybe 20, the bunker door beeped. One long tone, meaning an authorized entry. The lock disengaged with a heavy thud. My entire body stilled. The door swung open, and Elias stumbled in. He wasn't falling, not collapsing, but not steady either. Blood streaked across the white shirt he'd worn hours earlier. Dark stains marked his sleeves. His knuckles were torn open, bruised and raw. A cut slashed across his cheekbone. His breathing was uneven, but his eyes were locked on me. Nothing else, only me. Soren rushed forward. "Sir, you need medical—" Elias raised a hand without looking away from me. "Leave." "But, leave." Soren obeyed. The door sealed again. Elias stood there, covered in someone else's blood, shoulders heaving, staring at me with an expression I had never seen on him before. Something that looked like relief. Something that looked like fury. Something that looked like pain. I rose slowly. "It's not my blood," he said before I could speak. Even so, my knees nearly buckled. "You're hurt." "Not enough to matter." He took one step toward me, then another, and another, until he was standing right in front of me, close enough that I could smell smoke and metal and rain on his skin. His hand lifted hesitantly, like he wasn't a man who commanded fear for a living. He cupped my jaw gently, too gently. "They were close," he said, voice low. "Closer than they should have been." My breath shuddered. "Are they gone?" "Yes. All of them." His thumb brushed my cheek unconsciously. "You're shaking." I hadn't realized. He stepped even closer, the heat of him seeping through every inch of my body. "I told you to stay alive." His voice was a whisper, gravel and silk. "I did," I murmured. "Good." His forehead dipped toward mine. "Because I don't know what I would have done if I opened this door and you weren't here." The confession stunned me. The air changed, thickened, pulled tight like a string about to snap. His hand slid to the back of my neck, gentle, warm, claiming without hurting. Our breath mingled. His lips brushed mine. Not a kiss. Just pressure. Just promise. Just a ghost of contact that sent a wildfire through my veins. I inhaled sharply. He exhaled like he'd been punched. Our noses touched. His forehead rested against mine. His voice broke the last inch of distance between us. Tell me to stop. I didn't. Couldn't. Didn't want to. My fingers curled in his shirt, right over the place where blood had dried. His eyes darkened painfully, beautifully. He leaned in. And then the bunker alarm beeped once. A soft, apologetic tone, meaning someone is at the outer door. The moment shattered. Elias closed his eyes for 1 second, just one, before stepping back with visible frustration. He raked a hand through his hair, flexed his bloodied knuckles, then straightened. The mask of the Mafia boss fell back into place, but now I'd seen the man underneath. We'll talk later, he said. His voice was low and rough and entirely unconvincing. Because whatever that almost kiss was, talking wouldn't be enough. Not anymore. The morning after the attack, the mansion felt different. Quiet. Too quiet. Like the air itself was waiting for something. I found Elias in his study, still wearing the same shirt from the night before. Now cleaned, though the fabric carried faint reminders of blood that didn't belong to him. He sat behind a massive desk, posture rigid, fingers steepled under his chin. He wasn't a man. He was a verdict waiting to be spoken. When I stepped inside, his eyes lifted immediately. Sharp, alert, yet softer than they had any right to be. Clara, he said quietly. Sit. I did. He watched me for a long moment before speaking. You deserve the truth, he said. All of it. My stomach tightened. About my brother? He nodded once. A guard entered, placed a beige folder on the desk, and left silently. Elias pushed it toward me but didn't open it. I didn't tell you everything at the chapel, he said. I told you he stole what wasn't his, but not why he stole it. I held my breath. He leaned back, the leather chair creaking under him. Your brother didn't take the money to pay off gambling debt. My heart lurched. What? But you said... Because that's what I believed at first. His voice remained calm, controlled. It's what most men like your brother do. They gamble, they lose, they steal. His eyes darkened. But that's not what happened. He opened the folder at last. Photos, documents, a printed message thread. He slid one of the photos toward me. It showed my brother, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. A thin, elegant man, with an expression like a blade. Who is that? I whispered. Luca Salvi, he said. One of my rivals. A man who owns half the Eastern District, and who has been trying to start a war with me for 3 years. My pulse hammered. Your brother didn't steal from me randomly, he continued. Salvi targeted him. He tapped another picture. My brother sitting at a cafe table, looking nervous while Salvi slid an envelope across to him. Your brother was desperate to get out of debt, Elias said. Salvi offered to help him. Your brother thought he was accepting money. His expression hardened. He wasn't. Then what was he accepting? I asked. Elias's jaw clenched. A trap. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Salvi gave him instructions to pick up a bag at one of my warehouses, said it was easy money, said no one would notice. Your brother believed him. My breath stopped. So the robbery was orchestrated, Elias finished. Filmed. Designed to look like an internal betrayal. Salvi wanted me to think a Navarro employee had stolen from me. A spark to ignite a war. The pieces fell into place so fast it hurt. So my brother Didn't even know who he was stealing from? Elias nodded. Not until afterward, when Salvi told him the truth, and told him the price. Cold horror washed over me. He set him up to die. Yes. Elias's voice dropped lower. Using your brother as a pawn. A sacrifice. I pressed a hand to my mouth. My brother wasn't innocent. But he wasn't the monster I thought he was. He had been naive, stupid, manipulated, and the result had nearly gotten us all killed. I forced myself to breathe. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Elias didn't look away. Because I didn't know if you could handle the truth, or whether you would use it against me before I understood what you were to me. His tone shifted, quiet, raw, before I understood why I felt what I feel. My heart skipped painfully. What exactly do you feel? It came out barely above a whisper. He stood, rounding the desk slowly, as if the confession needed physical proximity. When he reached me, he stopped just close enough that the heat of his body soaked through the room. Before you came, he began, I thought obsession was the closest thing I had left to emotion. I swallowed. He continued. For 15 years I built walls. I buried softness under steel. I trusted nothing except blood and vengeance. I felt nothing. Nothing except control. He lifted a hand, hesitated, and then touched my cheek with trembling restraint. Then you walked down that aisle. The air thickened, and I felt something crack. His thumb brushed my skin. At first, I thought it was because you looked like someone I lost. He inhaled sharply. But last night, when the attack happened, when they tried to use you as leverage, I realized something I shouldn't have. My pulse pounded. Which is? He leaned in, forehead almost touching mine, voice barely audible. I didn't go out there to defend my empire. His lips came dangerously close to my ear. I went out there to defend you. Heat shot through me, frightening, beautiful, disorienting. He stepped back just enough to look into my eyes. You think I bought you? He said. And maybe I did. His voice softened. But I also saved you. Saved your parents. Saved your brother. And I didn't do it for power. A confession. Low, dark, intimate. I did it because somewhere along the way, Clara, I started caring. I felt my knees weaken. He caught my wrist gently. I don't know what this is between us, he said, but it is more than obsession now. His hand slid from my wrist to lace our fingers together. Whether you admit it or not, I exhaled shakily. Because the worst part, the part that scared me most, he was right. Something had changed. Something irreversible. He squeezed my hand. Say something, he whispered. I looked at him. The man who had taken me, protected me, terrified me, saved me. The man I should hate, but didn't. Not anymore. I think, I whispered, that nothing about you is simple. He gave a single, humorless laugh. No, he agreed. Except one thing. What? He leaned closer. I am not letting anyone take you from me. Not Salvi. Not your brother's mistakes. Not fate. Not anything. His voice dropped to a vow. I'm not losing you. And for the first time, I believed him. Not because he owned me, but because he felt something real. Something dangerous. Something that, terrifyingly, I might be starting to feel too. The sun was sinking behind the mansion when Elias finally found me. I was on the balcony of my room, of the room he insisted was mine, watching the sky bruise into shades of violet and gold. For the first time since I stepped into his world, there were no guards hovering beside me. Just silence. Just breath. Just space to think. The door behind me opened quietly. I didn't need to turn to know it was him. His presence always arrived a second before he did, gravity bending toward him. He stopped a few steps away. Clara. My name on his lips, always low, always steady, felt different tonight. I turned to face him. He looked exhausted, not physically. Something deeper. Someone who had fought a war outside and another one inside his own mind. I owe you an apology, he said. My brows lifted. For what? He stepped onto the balcony, his hands resting on the railing, close to mine but not touching. For taking your choices away. The wind carried the words between us like a truth he'd never spoken to anyone before. You were right, he continued. A gilded cage is still a cage, and I placed you in it because I thought it was the only way to protect you. He looked at me then. Really looked. Not like a captor. Not like a boss. Not like a man haunted by the ghost of someone I resembled. He looked at me like a man facing a question that terrified him. But I won't hold you here anymore. The world seemed to tilt. What do you mean? I whispered. His throat bobbed once. I'm giving you a choice, Clara. 4 simple words. Earthquakes sounded quieter. If you want to leave, he said carefully, I'll send you away with protection. Not just for you, for your parents, for your brother, new identities, clean records, places no one can find you. My breath caught painfully. He wasn't bluffing. He had already thought this through. You just let me go? I asked. His jaw flexed with something like agony. If it means keeping you alive, he said quietly. Yes. Lightning cracked through my chest. For him, Elias Navarro, who owned entire districts, commanded fear like currency and had never surrendered anything to anyone. To say this, it wasn't surrender. It was devotion. Twisted. Dark. Terrifying. Real. I stepped closer before thinking. And if I stayed? His breath hitched. Barely, but enough. Then you stay because you choose to, he said. Not because of your brother. Not because of a debt. Not because I dragged you into my war. He turned fully to me. If you stay, it's because you want to. Silence fell, heavy and electric. For the first time, I saw fear on his face. Not fear of enemies, fear of my answer. I exhaled shakily. Then I have conditions. His eyes sharpened, but he nodded, not resisting, not negotiating, obeying. Name them. Condition 1. I want independence, I said. Financial, personal. I won't be a prisoner. Not of circumstances, not of you. His answer came instantly. Done. Condition 2. I want my family safe. Not just now. Always. No hidden price. No strings. He placed a hand over his heart, not dramatically, instinctively. They're protected as long as I breathe. Condition 3. I want to know everything, I continued. No more half-truths. No more secrets. If I'm staying in your world, I need to understand it. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. Then you will, he promised. Every part of it. I will never lie to you again. The wind lifted my hair, brushing it against his chest. He didn't move, didn't touch. He waited. The 4th condition wasn't one he expected. And I want time, I whispered. Real time. To decide what we are. To see you without walls. And for you to see me as something other than someone you needed to save. Something flickered in his eyes. A break in the armor. He whispered, You already are. The air charged between us. He exhaled once, like a man stepping into fire willingly. Clara, his voice cracked. Tell me what you choose. My heart pounded so loud the world blurred. I stepped close enough that our chests nearly touched. close enough to feel his breath tremble for the first time. "I'm not running," I said. His eyes closed for a second, just one, relief washing through him like breaking light. When he opened them again, the gray in his irises burned. He didn't touch me. He let me touch him. My fingers lifted to his jaw, over the faint scar, over the rough stubble, over the place where blood had been hours earlier. He inhaled sharply. His hands hovered near my waist, but he didn't pull me in. He waited. For me. For the first time. I rose on my toes, tilting my face up to his. And finally, he understood. His hand slid to my waist. Slow. Reverent. As though he was terrified I'd vanish. He leaned in, brushing his lips against mine, barely there contact that felt like a vow. I whispered against his mouth, "This one, I choose." His restraint shattered. The kiss that followed wasn't protocol, wasn't possession, wasn't anger or desperation. It was devotion, raw and slow and terrifyingly honest. His hands pulled me flush against him. My fingers curled in his shirt. His breath mingled with mine. His lips moved with a gentleness I never believed he possessed. When he finally pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. We were both trembling. "Clara," he whispered, "I will spend the rest of my life proving that you chose right." And for the first time since entering his world, I believed him. Days in the Navarro mansion stopped feeling like captivity. Not because the guards disappeared. They didn't. Not because the danger dissolved. It grew. Not because Elias became less of a threat. He would always be a threat to someone. But something had shifted. We had shifted. The morning after I chose to stay, Elias knocked before entering my room for the first time. A small gesture, but monumental in his world. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, the faintest smile tugging his mouth. "We start today," he said. "Start what?" He extended a hand. "Your education." I didn't take his hand. Not yet. "Education in what?" His eyes softened. "In my world, our world, if you still want it." My breath caught. Because I did want it. Not the violence. Not the power plays. Not the danger. I wanted him. Unchained from secrets. Unfiltered, real. And so I stepped forward. He nodded once, a quiet approval. And just like that, our new life began. At first it was small things. He took me to meetings with his legitimate businesses, shipping companies, real estate, import deals. He let me sit beside him, listening, learning. He asked my opinion. Not as a courtesy, but because he genuinely wanted it. "What would you do?" he'd ask after a heated negotiation. The first time, I froze. "You can tell me," he said, tapping his pen lightly. "I won't bite." "You always bite," I murmured. He smirked, but he listened. And when I gave a suggestion about restructuring a contract negotiation, he actually used it. A week later, the contract closed in his favor. "Good instinct," he said quietly afterward. "You were right." Praise from Elias Navarro wasn't given. It was earned, and it meant everything. As weeks passed, he showed me more. The darker corners of his empire. The lines he refused to cross. The ones he sometimes did. But he didn't hide. He didn't shield me with lies. He let me see the monster he could be. And the man he was trying to be with me. One night, after a brutal meeting with his captains, he found me in the library. He looked tired. He never looked tired. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked quietly. I closed the book. I was. His jaw tensed. I stepped closer. But not anymore. Something broke open inside him at those words. something fragile, something he'd kept buried under iron and blood for years. He touched my cheek with the back of his fingers. "I don't deserve that," he whispered. "Maybe not," I said softly. "But you're earning it." He leaned his forehead against mine. Not a kiss. Not a claim. Just closeness. Just breath. Just peace. For a man like Elias, peace was rarer than gold. My family was visited regularly, escorted by trusted guards, protected with new locks, new alarms, new IDs. My mother cried the first time she hugged me. My father held me like he wasn't sure I was real. Every visit ended with Elias standing at a distance, giving us space, but ensuring we returned safely. And my brother. The first letter came 2 months into our strange, delicate marriage. It was shaky, full of apologies, full of regret for dragging me into hell. Elias handed it to me personally. "He's working in a restaurant in Montreal," he said. "New start, clean record, a sponsor." My throat closed. "You gave him that?" I asked. He shrugged. "You asked for your family to be safe. But you did this before I even asked." His gaze flicked away. "Maybe I did. Why?" He hesitated. Then, "Because I didn't want the weight of his mistakes on your shoulders anymore." And that was how I learned. Under the armor, a heart still beat inside him. Damaged, scarred, but beating. Our bond deepened quietly. Not in grand declarations, not in dramatic kisses, but in the small things. He drank coffee the way I did. He started carrying a second glass of water to bed because I always forgot mine. He touched my lower back when we walked, not to claim, but to reassure. He listened when I spoke. He trusted me with documents he wouldn't show his lieutenants. One evening, he placed a file in my hands. "What do you think?" I flipped through. "Financial projections, expansion plans, risk evaluations. You're showing me this because..." He exhaled. "Because I want you beside me," he said. "Not behind me, not under me, beside me." The words hit harder than any kiss. My voice trembled. "That's partnership." He stepped closer, searching my face. "If you want it. No pressure, no demand. Just choice." And I realized he had changed. Not for the world. For me. And I had changed too. Not because he demanded it. Because he earned it. One night, after another long strategy meeting, he walked me to my door. His hand brushed mine, accidentally at first, then deliberately. We stood there in the hallway, neither of us moving. His voice dropped, soft and rough. "Clara, it's becoming harder not to touch you." My breath shook. "Then don't stop yourself." His eyes darkened, not with lust, but something deeper, something tender, something dangerous in a way that made my heart ache. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to step back. I didn't. Our lips met. A slow, warm, deliberate kiss that tasted like trust and rising heat, and a future neither of us had dared imagine. His hands cupped my face. Mine curled into his shirt. We kissed again. And again. Not rushed, not hungry. Just right. When he pulled away, he rested his forehead against mine. "This," he whispered, "is what I was afraid of." "Why?" His answer was a breath against my lips. "Because now I don't ever want to lose you." I lifted my hand to his cheek. "You won't." And for the first time in his brutal, blood-soaked life, Elias Navarro believed it. The last threat didn't arrive with explosions. It came silently, like all lethal things do. For weeks, we knew Luca Salvi had vanished. His network crumbled, his allies surrendered, and yet the man himself was smoke drifting through our territory. Until the night he finally appeared. It happened during a shipment inspection, one I insisted on attending at Elias's side. Guards flanked us, the docks lit under the cold blue glow of industrial lamps. The ocean crashed against the pier, dark and restless. Elias stood beside me, fingers brushing mine, a silent reassurance we both understood. Then a gunshot cracked the air. Not at us. At a guard who dropped like a stone. Chaos erupted, but Elias didn't flinch. His body moved before thought, shielding me with an instinct so ferocious it stole my breath. Salvi emerged from behind a container, thin, elegant, eyes wild. "You took everything from me," he screamed. Elias stepped forward, calm as midnight. "You destroyed yourself." Another shot. Another body fell. I grabbed Elias's arm. "Let me help." His eyes flashed, a mix of fear and trust. "Stay behind me," he murmured. "But stay with me." We moved together, not as prisoner and captor, not as a terrified girl and a hardened mafioso, but as partners, as equals. Salvi lunged for a final shot. But this time, I saw it before Elias did. "Elias!" I slammed into him, pushing him out of the bullet's path. The shot grazed his shoulder, tearing fabric and skin. He hissed, but stayed on his feet. Alive. Then, with terrifying precision, he fired once. Salvi fell. The war ended in one heartbeat. Elias dropped the gun and turned to me instantly, gripping my arms, searching my face as though he couldn't believe I was there. "You could have been killed," he whispered, voice breaking. "So could you," I whispered back. "We protect each other." He pulled me into his chest, burying his face in my hair. For the first time, Elias Navarro trembled, not from rage, from relief, from love. After Salvi's fall, everything shifted. The territory stabilized. The captains bowed their heads when I entered the room. The guards began calling me Señora Navarro with respect, rather than obligation. And Elias, he let me lead. He let me speak in meetings. He let me revise contracts. He let me stand at his side when decisions were made. One afternoon, Soren approached me quietly. "The men trust you," he said. "They follow you because you choose to be here, and because he chooses you." It hit me then. I wasn't an outsider anymore. I wasn't a symbol. I wasn't a pawn. I had become part of the empire, not by force, but by purpose, by heart. 2 months later, Elias came to my room at sunrise, wearing a suit darker than midnight and an expression I had never seen on him. He stopped a few feet away. "Clara," he said softly. "We did things out of necessity once, out of debt, out of fear." He took a breath. "But nothing in my life has ever been done out of choice." He reached into his pocket. My heart stopped. He knelt. The air vanished from my lungs. "But you," his voice broke beautifully, "you were my first choice." He opened a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, delicate, gold, engraved with an oath in Latin, "In vita et in morte, una anima." In life and in death, one soul. My eyes burned. "Marry me," he whispered. "Not because you must, not because of protection, not because of your brother, but because we survived hell together, and I cannot imagine a future where you're not beside me." Tears slid down my cheeks, silent, unstoppable. I took his face in my hands. "Elias, I already chose you." His exhale was a shudder. He rose to his feet, kissed away my tears, and held me like he had waited his whole life for that moment. The ceremony was small, private, sacred. This time, there was no chapel filled with tension, no guns outside, no forced vows, just candlelight, ocean wind, a white dress I chose, a suit he wore only for me, and a vow whispered against my lips. Whatever comes, we face it together. Our kiss tasted like rebirth, and for the first time, nothing stood between us. Not fear, not debt, not ghosts, just love, real, fierce, chosen. A month later, I found Elias in the garden, staring down at something on the table, a small sonogram image. My breath caught. He looked up, eyes shining with a softness I never imagined possible on his face. "We're going to have a child," he said, voice trembling. My hand flew to my mouth. Joy crashed into me like a wave. He came to me, slow and reverent, placing the image in my hands. "Clara, this is our future." His palm slipped over my abdomen, his forehead pressing to mine. "You gave me a life I never believed I deserved." A tear fell from his lashes. "And now you're giving me another." I cupped his jaw, voice shaky. "We built this together, every step." He kissed me, not fiercely, not hungrily, tenderly, like a promise, like a vow, like the beginning of everything. Our empire stood stronger than ever. Our enemies were gone. Our families were united. Our home was filled with warmth instead of silence. And as Elias held me from behind that night, one hand resting protectively over our child, I realized the girl who walked into his world in chains was gone. In her place stood a woman reborn, a partner, a wife, a leader, and soon, a mother. Beside a man who had once been all shadows, and who now walked in the light we created together. The world outside whispered our names with fear, but inside these walls, we whispered them with love, chosen, earned, shared. Elias and Clara Navarro, a future written not in blood, but in hope. And this time, this life was ours, every unstoppable, breathtaking part of it.